Okay, I would like to start out by saying I am not an expert on video and green screen techniques, but I have been asked a few times how I do my videos using a green screen. There are two types of screens you can use to key out the background. One is a green screen, which I'm using here. The other is a blue screen. I want to point out that whichever blue screen or green screen that you use, make sure that color is not in your frame. And we can see here I've set up a green subject on the left, and on the right there's a blue subject. Because I'm using a green screen here, when I apply the keyer, you can see that the green disappears. So, and likewise with the blue, if this were a blue screen, the blue would disappear. So you really want to try to use contrasting colors on this. I'm a musician, and the camera that I usually use is a Zoom Q8, which tends to focus on sound over picture. If you were to use a better camera, you would certainly have different results. And later on, we're going to be using a Panasonic Lumix G7, which will show you the better camera with the better picture, but the sound is not as good. So it's kind of a toss which one to use. This is with the room light, which is very poor lighting. You can see the shadows underneath. Shadows do not key out well, and the deeper the shadow is, the less likely it is to key out. I'm going to show you a few simple techniques to make your keying with the green screen go as smoothly as possible. I'm just going to turn on two floor lamps. You can see that makes quite a difference. And I'm going to replace these with a subject. This is Baby Goo Goo. Hi. Okay, and you can see behind, you can see the shadows, how deep the shadows are. And depending how you move your camera around, those shadows will get worse or better. Okay, so it makes a big difference. I mean, you kind of really have to think about everything when you're doing this. I'm going to add a panel LED light, and this is adjustable. Something you want to be aware of, your light bulbs are going to have a yellow glow to them. Your fluorescent lights are going to have a blue glow to them. And with this LED panel, you can control them. So I kind of try to get a little tinge of both out. And with this LED panel, you can also control the amount of light. Here's blowout. Everything's really, really white, especially on this side. So I'll go ahead and adjust that. And you can see the color returning to my face, and it's probably good. You want to compensate between the blowout on the face versus the shadows on your green screen. So, and then of course too, you can move around and you can see the shadows getting further and closer to me. And I have a light right here. You can also use that to kind of get rid of those shadows, and believe it or not, this little thing helps a lot. Okay, and you can see those shadows are gone just with a little desk lamp on the floor facing up towards the green screen. And you'll notice here you still have some of the shadows, and you can see where the fold is on the green screen, but that is easily taken out in editing. So that looks to be about the best that I'm going to be able to get. And if we go with less bright, you could probably even see a little bit better, but then you see that we start losing a lot of clarity and it gets harder to remove the back screen. Okay, now that we've recorded as best we can, we're going to go ahead and see what it looks like after we start keying and trying to adjust that. Here's the first image, and this is without the extra lighting. This is just the room light. And you can notice the color change because I was using a green screen and I used objects that were blue and green. Sometimes these can be fixed in your software. Sometimes it's a pain in the butt and it's not worth it. And sometimes it will just completely wipe out that image. So be careful not to use the color that you're using for your green screen or your blue screen with your subject. Here is the clip after applying the keying to remove the background before I've done any adjustments to the color or exposure. And here is the same clip. I've deepened the exposure and I've added a bit of saturation, but you can see that also affects the original image. So depending on what will work for you, the best thing to do would be to record it properly with the right lighting and trying to avoid the shadows as much as possible. The further away from the green screen that you can be, the more likely you are to get rid of the shadows. 3 to 4 feet away from the green screen, you can see the shadows ease up quite a bit doing that. So the further you can get away from your green screen, the less you're going to have to worry about shadows. The disadvantage is, of course, you've got to have the space to do that. I just don't have the space in my studio to do that. I opt for close-up and doing as much as I can to get rid of it. Now again, there are 100 different ways to do this. This is how I do it, and this is what works for me.